Allyn,
Howdy.
how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I saw your showcase the other night. It was awesome. And I want to congratulate you for getting through this very difficult program, being a rock star.
Thank you so much.
Tell me a bit about you. You are kind of from New Orleans, but wait, you were up in Chicago. So tell me the story. Who is Allyn?
So I am currently a software developer. I did start out, working in customer service, but I decided that it wasn't really fulfilling enough. So I had a relative who worked at a company that offered an apprenticeship for software development.
Yep.
And I decided to take a leap of faith with that. I programmed previously before in middle school with programming robots and getting them to move, which was pretty much my introduction to coding. And I didn't hate it, so I decided to try it again.
I didn't hate it.
And look at it with a different perspective, because I was, I think, 12 when I did it before. So I thought maybe let's give it let's give it a go. It's something that doesn't involve robots, because I don't know if I was into the robotic part of it.
Yeah.
And so I went up there to Chicago and I did the apprenticeship. I was up there for 3 months.
Nice.
And we learned Ruby. It was pretty nice.
Yeah.
I made my first application there.
Cool.
Which was pretty cool. And I really liked it. I decided that was a way for me to flourish and to show my knack for problem solving, because I do love to problem solve. And I decided to keep it going,
Yeah. So and then so you were down here and you went up to Chicago for that session.
Yep.
And you moved up there. Did you have folks up there? Did you work?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
My dad is from Chicago,
Gotcha.
and so he had family up there.
Nice.
So I stayed with them.
Cool. Was it rigorous, the program?
It was rigorous in the fact that I was essentially competing with people who were already experienced in developing.
Okay.
It was my first time coding pretty much ever as far as web development goes.
Right.
And I was learning how to code. And it was my first language.
Yep.
And I was amongst people who knew other languages such as JavaScript.
Right.
So
and was the idea they go on to get a job? So it was sort of like 3 people enter the room. There's only 2 sticks, kind of thing.
It was supposed to be kind of where they have a plan for you.
Yeah.
They lay out the work, and the goal is for everyone to get a job.
Yeah.
But the job that you got was dependent on how quick you finished the work.
Okay.
So if you finished all the work by week X, then you would get a super technical job.
Right.
But they still wanted you to get a job regardless.
Okay.
But the only reason that didn't happen is because there just weren't enough partnerships. They were still a growing company and putting their name out there. So I decided, I still want to keep the ball rolling.
Nice. So you came back here. How'd you hear about OpSpark?
My mom actually told me about Operation Spark.
Hey, that's funny. I was saying to you just before we got on this little interview that I met your mom. I ran into her here at a event through Youth Force NOLA. And she's got an association there. Does she work there, or what is?
No, she works at New Orleans Career Center, but she works with Youth Force NOLA.
Now I remember her. I remember her telling me that she was at NOCC. And now I remember having met her. Yeah. So she had mentioned at the showcase that I met her a year before, and she told me about you and all that. And I was like, yeah, tell her to come on in. And you did.
I did.
So, yeah.
I also met a couple of your alum, or a couple of Operation Spark alum when I started networking here.
Cool.
I went to this networking event with Nolivate Black.
Yeah.
And most of the people there, like the attendees, were Operation Spark alum.
Cool.
And they had a lot of great things. So I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
I want to keep learning.
Yeah, nice.
And so.
Well, yeah, we know those the folks at Nolivate Black. That's Sabrina Short, and she's been running that org for a number of years. And sometimes we go out and do little events with them and stuff, do coding sessions and stuff. They're really great, in terms of getting people networking, in New Orleans around tech. So that's awesome. So you met some grads over there and they're like, yeah, you should do it. It's legit.
Definitely.
Yeah. Cool. And then, maybe tell us a little bit about the program UpSpark, like going through it, starting out in prep, because JavaScript was maybe new to you, but you already had some chops with Ruby and all that, right?
Yep.
So yeah, how was it picking up JavaScript?
So I remember going to the info session and I think Patrice told us that there was a course on Free Code Camp to do, and there were like over 100 exercises to do. And I was like, I'm going to get through this,
Yeah.
I really liked programming. And so when I was networking in Chicago, they were talking about how your first language is the hardest.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to be very diligent about learning JavaScript. And I sat there and I would crack out the exercises on Free Code Camp, and I would take notes on everything. I wrote them down physically.
Yep.
And
awesome.
I also made a Google Doc so that I wouldn't lose anything.
Nice.
And I stuck to it, I didn't want to compare the languages, but I did if I needed to kind of get a better understanding of a concept. Yeah. And I was pretty nervous because I didn't really know what to expect. But after prep, I did pretty well with prep. I think that might have been due to my previous experience coding because it was, very introductory, which I think is the point of it.
Yeah.
And then moving on to boot camp, it was where we kind of came across the concepts that were more difficult that I came across during that Free Code Camp course, like recursion,
closure,
exactly,
hoisting, recursion,
and I was worried that I was gonna fall behind, but I decided to change that worry into like motivation because I don't want to force myself to be too scared to approach something.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. When we were in class going over recursion, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to bug Alex. I'm going to, I'm going to ask my questions because I would do myself more harm by not asking the question.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much my mindset, throughout the entire program, is that I want to finish this program. I do like JavaScript.
Yeah.
I do want to make these applications.
Yep.
And so I'm going to make sure that I grasp everything that I need to grasp.
I'm glad you took that approach, I like how you said you came at kind of taking notes and in different ways, like in a Google Doc, making comments, coming at it in different ways and making sort of journal entries around understanding the code that you were writing.
Mm-hmm.
And then also like harassing your teachers, just like getting as much out of and not being afraid of to ask questions. Cause I think, sometimes that's one of the things that we see as students they feel nervous to, that they might look stupid or something, like coding is supposed to be, it's like learning to play chess or something. Like nobody wants to play chess in front of other people, they're always like, oh, no, I know a little bit, but I don't want to play,
Right, and they don't want to fail in front of other people.
They don't want to fail in front of other people. But I'm glad you had the courage to do that and the strength to do that. Where do you feel you get that kind of courage and just, I'm gonna do this?
I would definitely say that my parents certainly had me do that because in high school, I would be too nervous to ask questions in class because I didn't want to be seen as dumb. Yeah. And so then I would end up kind of falling in that dumb category because I didn't take the necessary steps to get the understanding that I needed. So I was like, you know what? If I want to know, I have to make sure that I know. So I would ask the questions, and I would sit in office hours every opportunity that I had.
I admire you for that. That is awesome. I really think that that kind of chutzpah, as they say, is what is going to allow you to tackle anything. Right. You were saying that your mama and your dada gave you that, basically, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, the grit kind of dealio. I was saying I admire you for having that kind of, courage and just strength to not be so afraid of learning. We're always so afraid to feel stupid in front of other people.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody struggles with it, and I feel like it's like the single most, one of the factors that hold people back the most is that what's their tolerance for kind of feeling awkward when they're new to something. That reflex to kind of just fail, and learn what by failing and that kind of stuff, and kind of bang your head against the screen till you get it right is really the thing. I feel like, when people are learning things, it's like they have a hard time dealing with how they're going to look in front of other people, and they just kind of bail. So I really admire you for not bailing.
Thanks. I kind of look for situations like that, strangely enough. I kind of look for opportunities to learn from.
Yeah.
I think I might just have a greater threshold of failure and vulnerability than others,
Yes. All right. Well, joining us now is Mike. Mike, tell us a bit about you. Where are you from, man?
Originally I'm from Rhode Island.
Okay. How did you fall all the way down here?
The film industry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I had gone to school for that in New York.
Nice.
And I didn't really want to stay in New York. Too busy to live in.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful to visit. Too busy to live in. LA feels like a West Coast New York, so I was going to avoid that as well. And at the time, New Orleans and Atlanta were like coming up. So I just felt like New Orleans was a better fit for me, and it definitely stuck.
That's interesting. We have a number of grads now that have come through from the film industry, and they found their way into UpSpark and are now software developers. I think maybe Mark Stark even was in the film industry. I can't remember. He's a really good guy, one of our grads. He's always coming out to events and things like that. But there's been a few others. Yeah.
I actually have a funny story about a film industry alum and
nice.
UpSpark alum. So I was in Rhode Island for most of immersion, handling some family things.
Okay.
And like the last week I was there, after we had made our LinkedIns and stuff, and I'm looking through people I may know on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
It's mostly Operation Spark people. And I see a guy I worked with like 4 years ago. I'm like, oh, cool. So I clicked, I looked at his profile.
Yeah.
And his location was listed as Providence, Rhode Island. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So like we were pretty friendly. We got out of touch because of the pandemic and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, that Monday was like the only day that we probably could have synced up. And it was the day I found him on LinkedIn. And we ended up going to a local pizza spot that I grew up going to. And yeah, it was just a weird, like, synchronistic
Who
event.
was that?
Brandon Sagelke.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Wow. And so you guys, he just randomly, you both like joined the program, but like, not knowing the other had, but you worked with them before.
Yeah. I worked with them like 2019, 2020. Yeah.
That's cool. And so then you were up there when you started, or you were down here? You heard about the program down here. How'd you hear about it?
Yeah, I by a friend who had gone to an info session, and he ultimately didn't think it was a fit for him.
Yep.
But he mentioned it as a local boot camp, and I was like, that's cool. Like I'd rather go local than something remote. Yeah. Especially like with networking, Yeah. So he just kind of mentioned it, and I went with it.
And was coding new to you at the time, like when you started in prep and all that, or had you done a bit of software before?
A little bit. Like I I tried self-teaching like on and off for a
Yeah.
few years, like HTML, CSS, JavaScript,
Yeah.
a little bit of C because I was
Oh, okay.
trying to do the CS50 from Harvard.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yep.
So yeah, that was my extent, and then I hit a wall where
Yeah.
wasn't sure where to go.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about, like, I do those online things from time to time, and I get like 20% in, and then I get busy, and
Yep.
that's part of it. I think one of the, there's nothing, I mean, I think there's a few unique things about our program, but one, you know, one of the biggest reasons I think it's effective is that there's a cohort of people going through the program together, and you got to show up and be active with your teammates and stuff like that. So it kind of keeps people on the straight and narrow for the most part, coming back. And, we tried to in the early days, we tried delivering the program in a bunch of different ways. And, I found that the more intervals there are for people to kind of not come back, like they don't. So if I'm like, okay, immersion, you're going to be here all day, forget everything else. That's been the most successful delivery of the program, to be honest. But I feel too like that frequency of practice is what it takes to get someone kind of up fast. It's as if you are on a job, you don't know how to do the thing, you got to figure it out, or you're not getting the paycheck type dealio. That's kind of how I learned anyway. So, okay. So tell me a little bit about, like, what were some of the things, Allyn, that what were some of the things you differentiations, like, between Ruby and JavaScript? Like, what were some of the things you were like, oh, that's different, or this language works this way, this one doesn't?
I think it was more of the use of JavaScript between Ruby for my personal experience,
Okay.
especially with how I learned it.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty much like a self-taught situation with Ruby.
Okay.
I love how flexible JavaScript was for me.
Huh.
And the difference, like, I compared the basic concepts, like, data types and what they are. But for me, it was learning more like deeper concepts.
Yeah.
Especially with, like, I think they were called factory functions in boot camp. And because with Ruby, there are classes in their language, but there aren't necessarily like inherent classes in JavaScript. So then when I was especially learning that you can create your own class in JavaScript, I kind of liked how universal JavaScript was to me in comparison to Ruby.
Yeah. So they have the pseudo classical type instantiation patterns where you can, it's not exactly an object-oriented language, it's prototypal. But where Ruby is, actually, everything is an object in Ruby. You can
Ruby is the object-oriented program language.
Yeah. Like, you can, even a number is an object. It's just shaped to behave like a number. So, yeah, interesting. And so, tell me a little bit about the experience. Like, I'll start with Allyn, like, going through the program once you got to junior and the full-time part of it. Because that's really, like, boot camp, there's definitely some rubber meeting the road in boot camp, but you guys are only there 4 days a week,
right?
3-4 hours a session, plus some homework maybe. But once you got to junior, you're in there 6 days a week, 11 hours a day, sprints, exercises, toy problems, all of that kind of stuff. How did you feel like jumping into that end of it?
Well, I took junior twice. And so the first time I took junior, I felt like I was blindsided. I completely underestimated what junior was going to be like. Yeah. And so I was trying to, this is when I had my realization of I need to make some changes as to how I learn, because with me coming from such a traditional educational background, with my mother being in education and even my like dad being in education to some extent. Okay. Cool. I was just so used to the traditional learning where the concept is introduced and you obtain mastery and then you move on to the next concept. Right. And I struggled in junior the first time because I wasn't obtaining that mastery with the concepts,
Yeah.
and everything was moving so fast,
Yeah.
and I was on the computer all day,
Yeah.
and I didn't know how to manage my time well,
Yeah.
and there were so many things that I needed to change, and everything was happening at once.
Yeah.
But then after the first time I did junior, I already knew the changes that I needed to make. I had to get a strict kind of regimen going as far as like how to deal with my workload, and especially with note taking.
Yeah.
I was kind of struggling with taking notes because even though I preferred to write my notes by hand,
Yeah.
it was still kind of hard to write notes because we're programming, and it's
Yeah.
like hard to write down code and kind of
Right.
understand it in a way
Yeah.
that will translate on a computer.
I totally get you there. Yeah.
And I remember I was like, okay, we're going to hit the ground running. I know exactly what I need to do. I know how to manage my time. You know, with the sprints, there's this allotted sprint time, but then you
Yeah.
also have your toy problems that you have to work on, as well as your blog and presentations. And so I remember the first time I took junior, I never got around to doing my blogs until Sunday, and that was not working. I
man.
would break my back on the computer until like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
doing my blog because of how poorly I managed my time. And that's really where I became super adaptable to what
Yeah.
came my way.
Yeah.
And I learned to take the information that I needed to take from whatever was being presented to me,
Yeah.
especially with the sprints, like with React and Angular.
Yeah.
I knew that I don't need to know everything
Yes.
that there is to know, and you're just not going to.
Yeah.
When we were learning back end with Node,
Yeah.
and I would spend hours going through the Node documentation,
Yeah.
and I didn't need to.
Right.
I didn't need to. I don't think anyone will ever fully complete Node
No.
documentation.
No, you're right. They won't.
And so that's where I learned how to be a fast learner. You know, I felt like I was probably a naturally fast learner in other aspects,
Yeah.
but definitely here I learned how to be really like quick on my toes, which I thought was pretty good.
That's
I
awesome.
learned how to research better. I
Yeah.
think junior was very transformative for
Yeah.
me as an individual.
Yeah, I've heard that word used a few times, transformative, that's where the walls are that you got to get over, and it shapes you and gives you some skills in a different way, and it shows you what you're capable of. And sometimes you just can't. I used to get up at the top of immersion and tell people, okay, you'll experience X, Y, and Z. Nothing I said would prepare people for them going through it themselves. You just
Mhm.
have to be in the hot seat. And have that problem to solve, and then really have that deadline to solve it. You know, I feel like, I don't know, without things being that eminent, we don't often push ourselves. It's a whole other thing if you're on a competitive sports team, you know, or certain other learning environments. Like I went to school for music, and those folks are serious, and they're serious from a young age.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something driving those. They've been at it for a long time. So when you get into that level of music school, I went to Manhattan School of Music. There's kids coming from Russia and from Korea, and they're like they will just eat you for breakfast because that's all they've been doing all their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So they're used to that mode of learning, of practice and discipline, and it's like being on an Olympic sports team, you know, and they've been pushed, and they want to push themselves on it. And I feel like outside of those experiences, like you're in competitive sports or something like music, you don't often see that get pushed to your limits to see where, hey, what am I capable of?
True.
So I'm grateful to know that junior at least provides some of that, or the immersion program provides some of that experience for folks to just be like, this is tough, but I'm going to figure it out. You know, I know I got the mind for it. Mike, tell me about your jump into the junior phase of the program. What we're talking about for the people that are, you know, there's different, you know, the length of the program, our immersion program, there's different phases. It starts with prep, which is an introductory program, and then boot camp is a deeper dive into, you know, fundamental programming concepts and you practice a bunch, and then you get into the junior phase where you start. It's full time. There's a 6-week or 7-week cycle, and then seniors another 7-week cycle. And both those 7-week cycles are 6 days a week, 11 hours a day schedule. It's fast moving, and you're learning new concepts every day, and you got to turn in work and all that kind of stuff. So how did you feel about jumping into junior, and what'd you get out of it?
I didn't know quite what to expect. I think, throughout the whole thing, trust the process was a mantra. That helped specifically to focus myself on things in front of me and not necessarily things that I'll have to worry about next week or whatnot, because that would just add to the stress. I think, by week 3, I think it was like, oh boy.
Right.
This is like a lot of like overdue work. And my body, I didn't luckily I wasn't too harsh on my body.
Yeah.
But it was still like, okay, this isn't a quick in and out.
Yeah.
Like this is like these 6 weeks are so packed, it's going to feel longer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think being introduced to so many topics all at once is like super, what's the word? Overwhelming at times.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, helps a lot, even just to get like a big picture of programming as a whole, like things that apply to multiple languages, not just JavaScript.
Yeah. And then both y'all got through junior, you moved on to senior. That's really the project phase where you guys are building out different projects in different contexts. You've got an MVP, you got Greenfield, which is kind of a wide open project. And then you had Legacy, where you inherit a project and you've got to dig into the code base and write new features to it and improve it and so on and so forth. And then you had your thesis project. And I got to see both your projects at the showcase, and I find it amazing all the time, man, when I see the grads put up their tech stack on during the presentation, and there's this slide filled with tech, and most of the stuff I know, kinda, and then some of it's new to me, even to me. And I'm always learning, like, what's the new hotness coming down the pipe that the grads are getting into. It's cool to see that. Tell me a little bit about that experience of senior, because once you get past junior, you got to write your summary assessments, like a midterm exam kind of thing, or a finals exam. And then you're into the senior phase. And it's a whole different vibe, isn't it? Right? Once you get into senior, it's a lot more fun, I would say.
Yeah.
Is that what you got? Is that how you read it too? Or?
Definitely. I think I was a bit more, dare I say, relaxed in senior. The pressure was still there to get these things done.
Yeah.
But I like the freedom of being able to pick your own projects.
Yeah.
Me and Mike actually did Greenfield and Legacy together.
Cool.
Which was pretty fun.
Yep.
But I did we were still pushed to step outside of our comfort zone with the technologies.
Yeah.
Especially for thesis.
Yeah.
Thesis was completely, for the most part, brand new to me.
Yeah.
With a lot of the technology.
Oh, cool. Good. Good.
But I think senior was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like there's still, because there's like new tech that we're working with, there's still like, and the timeline, there's still that feeling from junior where, oh my God, I got to cram. I got to figure this out quick.
Yeah.
But I felt like in senior, I was able to do the tutorials more, like for the piece of the tech. And that I felt helped me like transition from the junior where there is guidelines and instructions on what to learn.
Yeah.
Like transition from that to guiding myself and choosing what texts I want to learn and how to learn them and implement them.
And I bet too, though, like once you get to something like thesis, it's wide open, right? You get to kind of design and pitch your design and then work with Katie and Peter and the rest of the folks to get that approved. But it's kind of all you, right? You all are coming up with it on the spot.
Yep.
So how were the design discussions around, say, your thesis project? Like, how did you guys come up with ideas? How were you spitballing and whiteboarding and all that kind of stuff?
In my group, since we all were like, everyone's different and we all have different interests and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So we initially kind of just spitball what we were all interested in, and what we liked. And some of the answers were pretty broad, and overall there weren't any dots connecting between our interests. So we had to think back of what projects we probably wanted to create, and just never really had the drive to do it yet, or didn't really push ourselves to create it.
Okay.
And so for Just Vibe, I remember thinking of, I wanted to have like a similar rendition to MySpace because I didn't experience MySpace, but I've heard so many great things about it. So I wanted to do MySpace, and something that motivated me to, or kind of how we got to Just Vibe from MySpace, was the music aspect of it.
Yeah.
I remember people saying that they would put music on their pages.
Yeah.
So when someone would visit their page, there was music involved.
Gosh, that's funny, man. MySpace. I remember like it was sort of like the precursor to Facebook, except you could customize your page like entirely, right? So it was really, people really came up with some creative things, and there were people who did just that. That was their job. They customized MySpace pages for their music, for artists or whoever. Man, it was a time.
That was my first exposure to HTML.
Oh wow!
And I didn't get how powerful it was.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, paste this code here to make your profile background orange.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I could see the little values like within the tags and whatnot, but it didn't strike me as something that could be so powerful.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. And something else that led us to Just Vibe was everyone loves music. And so we kind of got on a tangent about music, and somehow we ended up on the website Pitchfork.
Oh yeah.
Where there are journalists who will give their reviews on music. So they'll rate the album and they'll give, their commentary on why they gave that review. And I remember we were going through the reviews, we would search this album, because we were on a Zoom call, and we would kind of debate like, I don't really think that's a good, a good grade for that album.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty much how Just Vibe came to be, because we didn't know of any applications or websites where you can give your review, like, on Yelp where you can give your review on a restaurant, or like Goodreads where you can give your review on a book.
Yeah.
And it's for any user to give their own review. So that's pretty much how Just Vibe came about. We wanted to give our 2 cents on music, and we wanted to share those 2 cents on music.
Nice. What about you guys, Mike? How did you guys come up with your thesis project? Like, what were some of the design discussions?
I think it was, we also use the approach of, what are our interests, and like what do we have in common? Because, if we are having fun with this project, it's gonna, it's just gonna be easier to work with. And and so I think a couple of us had ideas already.
Yeah.
And one of them was Make Dev.
Yep.
And
it's a cool idea. So Make Dev is kind of like a social app for developers, and Vibes. What was it called? Good Vibes.
Just
Vibe. It is an app where you can read create reviews on music, among other things. But also, can you answer to other people's?
Answer.
Like, can you comment on other people's reviews?
We didn't have it set up to comment on reviews because that wasn't something that
Yeah.
we felt was part of the vibe yet.
Cool.
But when we were kind of developing the app more, we kind of decided that maybe it would be nice to comment and have a more social aspect to it.
And so and Make Dev is all that. It's like you are not GitHub isn't the pitch was sort of GitHub is not really a social platform, and LinkedIn is kind of too broad for developers, so you kind of combine the two. Yeah.
A place to showcase your work. And like, to me, it's like a little closer to GitHub, because there is the repo and you can show that in a post, but also with the post you can submit a screenshot. So if say your repo is of your login page or login component, you can show that in a view. So then it instantly translates to something that's visual on the page, rather than, like say you are searching for a job. If you're on LinkedIn, there's not really a way to show that.
Right.
Also, recruiters might not be technical.
Yeah.
So they to show a non-technical person what you can do.
Yeah.
That visual element is pretty important.
Yeah. Very cool. And I'll ask you a couple more questions. How about what was the most difficult thing for you technically in your thesis project to manage? Allyn, how about you?
Part of it was authentication.
Okay.
I was more hands-on with authentication for thesis than I was with previous projects. And that was actually one of our biggest hurdles throughout the project. We chose Auth0 at first. But there were a lot of issues with that, and it set us back a lot with our development. And everything wasn't intuitive as far as dealing with user information.
Did you back out and use another library?
Yeah, we swapped out Auth0 for Passport. We had to abandon ship because
that's okay.
As far as time and getting everything done and meeting certain guidelines, we just weren't doing that with Auth0. So,
what platforms did you log in with?
Google.
Yeah.
So we used Passport, and I was, getting a better feel for Passport. So that was certainly one of the larger hurdles. And another one, I would personally say was Prisma.
Yeah. Cool.
I did a blog post
for the audience. What's
sorry.
Prisma? No, I just want to.
Prisma is an ORM.
Yeah.
So,
How does it help you?
It helps you manage and interact with your database.
Exactly.
So,
awesome.
Prisma, it's pretty. I won't say it's heavy.
Yeah.
But it certainly is it streamlines, interacting with the database.
Yeah.
You can create your schema
in JavaScript.
With their there's a Prisma schema that you set up, and so because Prisma works with SQL and NoSQL databases, which I think is great.
Yeah.
And you can use Prisma to map out your schema for whichever database you choose. Yeah. And it makes it a lot easier to handle your database or the data in your database because it's pretty much all in one spot, Yep. All you can deal with your data strictly through Prisma, and you can go to your database, like your SQL database, if need be, to verify.
Right.
But everything's pretty streamlined, which I do love.
Yeah.
But there were certainly some challenges with Prisma.
What about you, Mike? What was the
puller? We also had to switch from Auth0 to Passport.
Okay.
We were looking to use GitHub and LinkedIn logins.
Yep.
But that it was too much trouble, so we switched to Passport.
Yeah.
But for myself, I was implementing the direct messaging feature, and I wanted that to be real time, so I was dealing with Socket.io for WebSocket connections, and it was all pretty okay. Like, didn't run into anything huge until deployment.
Yeah.
And like, so we decided to use Docker for deployment.
Oh, cool.
So, and our app was on port 3000, whereas the socket IO was on port 4000. So
Yeah.
we exposed both ports in the Docker image.
Yeah.
But there was still, like, once we ran the container, there's just errors down, up and like all the way down the browser.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, damn it. So yeah, it ended up just being a little configuration with
Yep.
Nginx.
Yep.
But it got me stuck for days.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I really had to step back and grasp what was going on. Try things intentionally. Because I think I did kind of fall into the trap of like, oh, this little thing could change. Let me try that.
Yep.
But, you know, that happens too much and gets out of hand. So
Yeah, there's some sayings for that in software. They say, what was it? You plan to burn one, and that means the first time you go through the first iteration of the application is something you're going to probably toss. So the MVP is really just to get everything set up, and then for you to make a few mistakes, and then you're probably rebuilding it maybe. I've heard other people in other domains say, what is it? You're going to school on the first build, you know. So say you're building I don't know, you're a carpenter and you're building a table, and it's the first time you're building this type of table or whatever. Well, you're going to school on the first one. You're going to make mistakes and bang your head against or pull your hair out in a couple of ways. So yeah, that's it. But I mean, you know, nothing's hard, just new.
Yep.
Which is one of the
So we've
things.
heard.
Yes, we get this. It's a saying I learned actually from a fella, great jazz bass player he also used to say, "Sleep when you're dead," and he was like adamant about practicing all day and just playing music all night. But yeah. Well, I congratulate you both. I'm grateful to get to know you a little bit and to have seen your work. You know, I'm a big fan of the fact that you graduated from the program. Every time I meet OpSpark grads or get to see their work, it's like meeting a Jedi or something. You know, you're special people for getting through this program, and I really admire both of you for the work that you did and getting through it. And
Thank you.
Thanks.
and I mean that honestly. I think the program is really a challenge, and you get through it. It's a huge badge. So congratulations to both of you. And what's next for each of you? What are you trying to? What's your goal next, Allyn?
I am looking into doing some freelance work.
Yep.
There are some people who wanted me to make websites.
Yeah.
You know, when you tell people you work on computers, they kind of
Yes. They're coming at you.
they have their demands ready. So I'm gonna put myself out there. I started reaching out to some people who wanted me to make websites for them. So
Good.
I'm getting my feet wet with that, as well as using that as an opportunity to learn new technologies.
Yeah.
I want to try my hand with Vue.js.
Yeah.
I heard that's pretty cool. And PostgreSQL,
Yeah.
that's something I want to try out. So I'm going to use these freelance opportunities as a way, you know, to learn, as well as looking out for some jobs, you know.
Yes. Yes.
Pretty exciting.
Okay.
So that's what I've been doing, and keeping, as Johnny says, keeping the axe sharp.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, you got to practice a little bit and keep coding and doing exercises and do the thing that you love, you know. Like if you've got a little passion project on the side, keep it going. Keep the flames on it. And how about you, Mike? What's your dream, the next step in your dreams?
I mean, pretty much the same. I've had a few ideas of projects to make for a while, so I'll probably pick up on that. I think first is a very practical project. I just want a way to track my library of books, records, DVDs, and stuff like that,
Yeah.
but be able to access that on the go. So, like,
Oh, cool.
if I'm at the thrift shop, do I have this DVD already? And I can check, like, okay, I have this. So, yeah, something like that. And Yeah, and like the Allyn, using that opportunity to learn new tech, like things that I've heard during the program that interest me, but didn't have the time to investigate.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like the world is my oyster. So
Sure is.
a lot of possibilities.
Both y'all. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to see where you end up in a couple of years, both y'all. I hope you keep coming back and coming out to our showcases and stay in touch with the alumni and all that. And of course, I'm going to see you in job hunt for a little minute, but you can have a job in no time. So I'm happy for you. I congratulate you both, and thanks for spending some time chatting with me today.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
It's fun.
Okay, cool. See you in a bit.